Hey guys, it's the Wine Loving Bookworm back a day late with my book review. Sorry, it's Labor Day weekend and I just lost track of time and didn't have the time to do it yesterday. So here I am on Monday. It's kind of like the new Sunday this week, right? So I'm really excited because I am done with the Whole30 and tonight I can have wine. Yay! So the Whole30 went really well. It was really difficult. Not to drink wine, and it was pretty restrictive diet-wise, but I did learn a lot of stuff about what my body is reacting to and what I might want to avoid in the future, so I'm not sorry at all that I did it, but I'm really happy that I can drink wine again. So tonight, I am a big red wine person, in particular Pinot Noir I like, and so I saw this at the store. It's called Skater Girl, and I mean, look at that label. Is that not the cutest thing ever? Like that little dog on a skateboard in a tutu. So I had to pick it up. So let's give it a shot. Here we go. That's pretty good. I just tried another one this weekend because the Whole30 was done last Thursday, so I wasn't waiting until tonight to have my first glass of wine. And it was called La Crema. It was also a Pinot Noir. That one I felt was a little bit acidic, so just a little bit much. This one's much lighter. This actually tastes like French wine, and I love French wine, so I really like this one. I'll have another sip because I can. Yeah, that's good. And college football is back, and I don't know if you can see that, but go Knights, UCF. We're going to dominate again, I'm sure. Okay, so on to the book. This week I read, or not week, I guess I did read it in the week, so that's right, this week. I read Homegoing, and that's by Yaa Gyasi. It's a fiction book. It's about 300 pages, real easy to read, real good, on the plane, on the beach kind of book, I think. She's a really great writer, and very, very easy to read, not dense, not, too in-depth. So I chose it because it's my book club book. We're meeting next week, so I'm really kind of looking forward to what people thought about this book. I have kind of a little bit of mixed feelings on it, but I'll get to that later. The author, she's actually from Ghana, where the book takes place, and she moved to America when she was about 2, I think. She's pretty young. She was born in 1989, so that makes her about 29, I guess. She wrote this book when she was 26, and she won like a whole bunch of awards for it. It was her debut novel. She's a really great writer. I mean, it's very evident from this book. So, I guess she deserved it. But she went to Stanford, and she went to University of Iowa, and most of her childhood she spent growing up in Alabama. Huntsville, I think you said? I might be confusing that with the book. But one of the characters in her book actually had pretty much the same background as she did. So I didn't know that. I just read about her about half an hour ago when I looked her up. So that was actually my favorite character in the book as well. So I found that pretty cool that she based it on her, and it happened to be my favorite character. So the book itself, it starts off in Ghana in Africa, and it's 2 half-sisters that don't really know about each other, Effia and Essie, and Effia ends up marrying, quote unquote, I should say, a white slave trader. Basically, the white men were in Africa doing the slave trade, and she moves into this castle by the sea, and I say quote unquote married because he has a wife back in London, and this is his like African wife, so it's very weird, but they do end up having kids and all that. I mean, they get married with a priest or a minister or something. And Essie is actually captured and taken as a slave and eventually makes her way over to America. So you kind of have these 2 sisters living very different lives, obviously. Effia's descendants stay in Africa for the most part till the end. Essie's descendants go over to America as slaves and then, eventually just as Americans. So the book goes chapter to chapter. Starts out with Effia, chapter about Effia, then it goes to Essie, there's a chapter about her, and then it kind of goes back and forth with their descendants. So chapter 3 is about Effia's son, chapter 4 is about Essie's daughter, I think. So and then it just keeps going like that until almost modern times. So it goes from everything from in America, which I found to be the more interesting part. I don't know. Everything from, maybe just because I'm more familiar with, slavery to, freeing freeing the blacks, to all the racism and prejudice in America, to the civil rights movement, to Harlem and the drug problems, all the way to modern day. So I really liked reading about that and kind of thinking about our history in the context of the book. Effie's children stayed in Africa, and they mostly lived in the tribes, and it was interesting learning about the tribes and, how they would intermarry to, protect their interests or to avoid a war. The cultural aspects of Ghana in Africa were really amazing to read about. They have such a rich history. You can kind of see that this book is a little bit, they talk about oral histories that have been passed down, and there's a lot of these superstitions. There's this fire woman that appears to one of them in a dream. So all of that was fascinating, and I really enjoyed reading all of that. And you really get this sense of this rich culture in Africa, which kind of they lose a bit coming over to America. And one of the characters actually yearns for it. He wants to go back to Africa because he's so, upset at the way America is in kind of like the 60s civil rights movement era. So that's kind of the basic background of the story. Now, Effie, because she marries a white guy, there's white in her lineage. And it's kind of ironic because when her descendants, like I said, stay in Africa for the most part until the end. And that white keeps popping up. They're lighter. They have lighter eyes. They have lighter skin. They look a little bit different, as they go. And that's almost a problem in Africa. The blacker you are, I think they appreciate that more. Whereas Essie's descendants are very dark, and they're in America, where throughout our history that is not appreciated, and that's not something that is looked upon by at least white people as the ideal. So I found that very interesting. With Essie's descendants, the slaves, and now they're free, and she has a daughter who's a descendant, which is kind of like, it kind of flips the script a little bit. She actually marries a black man who's so light-skinned, and from the story it appears that he gets more light-skinned as it goes on, which was odd to me. He can pass as a white guy. And so when they actually go and they flee and they move up to Harlem, because I think they were all in the South. I cannot remember now where they were in the South, possibly Alabama, somewhere like that. And because of the Jim Crow and all that stuff, there was a lot. They talked about a big migration up to the north to get away from all of that. And this is where Willie, the daughter, one of the descendants of Essie, marries, I can't remember his name now, Eli, I think, and they move up to Harlem. And he actually ends up leaving her because he can have a better life kind of pretending he's white, and he ends up marrying a white person. So that, all these layers of skin color in the African American community, and even in the African community, is fascinating to me. I have no frame of reference for that. So, being lighter being more ideal, or being darker being more ideal, or whatever, and then having a guy so light he wants to leave his wife and go and have a white life. There's a lot there, that's just, it's a lot of cultural stuff, a lot of psychological stuff there. So I really enjoyed how she weaved that through the story. So one of Effie's descendants, Yaa, who survived his mom, they didn't really give a lot of details, but apparently she lit their hut on fire, killed his sisters. He survived that. Very disfigured man. As he gets older, he ends up marrying late in life and moving to America, to Alabama specifically. So that is where her, as an author, she's kind of putting herself into the book, because he has a daughter named Marjorie, and they come from Ghana, and I think she's about the same age too. So they come from Ghana to Alabama. Actually, she might have been a little bit older. I loved Marjorie. I just loved her. I thought she was the best character in the book. When she came to America, she was so taken aback by how blacks and whites were kind of treated. You know, you're black, you're over here, you're white, you're over here. But she didn't fit in with the blacks because she was different. She was from Africa. They made fun of her, like that she had kind of an English accent and that she was into studying and things, and they just didn't like her. And one of her teachers said she had to do a poem or something, and she said, well, talk about being African American in this society. And she instantly was like, I'm not African American. And her teacher was like, she's like, I'm African, you know, I'm from Ghana. And actually in Ghana, they had a different word for African Americans. And her teacher just looked at her and goes, you're black. In America, if you're black, you're black, you're black. You know, pretty much that's what she said. So that was interesting to me coming from her background. She just didn't get that. She's like, I'm different. But no, you're the same. Like you are different, but here you're the same. You know, if you're black, you're black. And that I just thought was the biggest commentary on our culture and our in America and the way we treat black people, African Americans, people from Africa. You know, you have people from Haiti, you have people from actual Africa, you have people who have been here for hundreds of years, but we kind of put them in the same box, you know, and I think we're all guilty of that. So that was one of the most poignant moments I felt like in the book. Now, what I didn't like about the book, and kind of at the end, the sides kind of come together. So you kind of knew that was going to happen. So I won't give all that away, but at the end, they kind of come together. Effie's descendants and Essex. So what I didn't like about the book was that you would get really into learning about this person and their story, and the chapter would end, and it would skip forward to the next generation. And especially the two women in Africa. I wanted to know more about them, you know, I want to know more about them. And it was just, the book ended, and then you leapt forward. So you had no idea how they got from here, how that son got from being in this castle to being back in the tribes, you know, in Africa. He's out of the slave traders area and went back to, you don't know. And so that kind of frustrated me a little bit. But overall, I thought it was an excellent book. The writing was amazing. She's an excellent writer. And she really drew you in. And I really liked the last half of the book. I kind of like the more modern stuff. Some of the stuff way in the past in Africa, it kind of lost me a little bit. But I really like the more modern stuff. And like I said before, I love, kind of thinking about American history in the context of this book and in the context of the stories of these people's lives. So I really like that about the book. So that is my review on Homegoing. So again, Homegoing, Yaa Gyasi. I hope she continues to write some books. I don't know if she's written anything else. I should look that up. But this book was really good, and so I hope she does write something else. And I'm going to my book club next week, so I will let you guys know if there's any more interesting things we talk about or stuff that I didn't pick up on at the book club. I have not picked out the book for this week. I haven't even started it yet. I got to find something that's maybe a little short. I'm going to look at what I got, and then maybe I'll update you on Instagram. If you haven't already, please follow me on Instagram, Wine Loving Bookworm, and or you can look under Sarah Hampton, and I will do that maybe on Wednesday. I also have to read the third book in the stories that my son is reading for school. I kind of follow along with him with that, and it's the Pendragon series. Never even heard of it, but I've been doing that too, so I got to find a way to fit all this stuff in. So next week's book might be on the smaller side, but I will let you know by Wednesday on my Instagram page. So that's all for me. Pick up Homegoing. Get you some Skater Girl Pinot Noir. Come on, you can't forget that label, right? You can find that in the store. And I will see you next week. Cheers.